So we'll get started here on this beautiful February 6th day. Hope everybody had a great Groundhog Day. And of course, you heard the prediction of the groundhog that spring is right around the corner. So get the lawnmowers all tuned up and ready to go.
2 more weeks of Taylor Swift.
Yeah. At least. Yeah. So we'll welcome our co-host in there, Melanie.
Hi guys, how's it going?
Yeah, so you bugged out on us last time there, Mel. So
I was having some computer problems, so happy to be back. My picture's not on the screen. I unfortunately am now sick this week, but we're here and I'm happy to listen to the lesson tonight.
Wow. Now you're sick.
It's all right. We're pushing through.
Well, good to have you anyway, put it that way. And
happy to be here.
You've been doing well and working hard, so
yeah, we're trying,
as I understand anyway. So we'll get started with our intro tonight. And we are expecting a couple of new people tonight. If you're on board, welcome to the Zoom room. Mel, can you believe this is the 119th edition of the Zoom Rock Room?
That is terrific. We are approaching that 150 mark, slowly but surely.
Yeah, we gotta start to come up with a celebration for that one.
Yes.
Eventually here. So, yep. So, if you've not been here before, welcome aboard, and good to have you all here. And I guess we intend to keep this thing going as long as we can do it. And of course, the Zoom Rock Room is always sponsored by Lair Architect in Lake Havasu City. Lair Architect at yahoo.com. And I threw this picture in here for this edition because part of our vacation that we were in Arizona there in November, if you were on the Zoom Rock Room at one particular night, I did a remote from the Grand Canyon. But anyway, the guy in the white T-shirt, that is my cousin Paul Lair, the architect. And to his right in the blue is my brother, my now retired minister brother. And of course, sitting in the chair trying to swallow the water bottle is my wife, Luann. Okay. So that's actually on Paul and Marcella's upper deck, kind of on the roof of the house, overlooking Lake Havasu. So anyway, send them an email at layerarchitect at yahoo.com if you want to appreciate what they do. It will be coming up for another contract agreement here in another month or and a half or so. You want to take it, Mel?
Of course. So as always, good old Dirtman's reports. I'm unaware if we have one this evening or not, but he posts all of his videos that are very educational, but at the same time pretty comical as well. It's a fun way to learn. And all of his videos are on YouTube, so go check him out. Andrew, he is he's a wonderful guy.
I don't think Andrew's in tonight. So anyway,
all the more reason to go on YouTube and find his videos.
Let's find him, find out where he's at. Okay, speaking of Andrew, he's the president of the Central Pennsylvania Rock and Mineral Club. It meets in Lingelstown, and big event coming up for that organization on March the 2nd. It's the Popular Rocks for Kids program. It's a great day. We get about 120 kids every year, and they go through various stations learning about different aspects of geology and earth science. It's only $5 per child. So if you go to their website, rockandmineral.org, and click on Rocks for Kids, you will find a registration form. It's actually held at the Lingelstown Life United Methodist Church which is not where the club meets regularly. They meet at another church in Lingelstown. So March 2nd, 10 to 3, we'll be there doing a station on minerals and actually making toothpaste sort of thing. All right, go ahead, Mel.
I got it. So the Institute, their whole campaign is to educate, inspire, and unite. Go check out their website if you haven't already. And support that capital campaign and help them try to build a new community nature center. I was always blessed to have a nature center in my backyard, and other people should have that same privilege. So this is a great cause. Please, again, check them out. If you're feeling generous, support the campaign, and they are ensuring the future.
All right, a couple things involving the Institute. They're actually just about ready to change their name. So I know what it is, but I'm not allowed to tell anybody what it is at this point. But we're going to have the director of the Institute on Zoom Rock Room when she's ready to announce the new name. So anyway, May the 2nd, you can come to Waynesboro to the Apostles, Church of the Apostles, and I'll be doing a program called The Rise and Fall of the Appalachians. It's a PowerPoint program, free admission. It's always a nice turnout. It's one of my favorite programs to do every year. So that's on a Thursday, May the 2nd, and that's kind of a precursor for our bus trip that we do every year with the Institute, May 11th. And we're going to be taking a trip to Bedford County. Myself and leader Steve Lindbergh, who's I don't think in the room tonight, but we're going to do a field trip. It's called Crystals, Creatures, and Caverns. And we'll go to the New Parish Quarry, which is northwest of Bedford. And Steve has permission and uses it for a geological educational quarry. And you can find some beautiful fluorite and calcite there, and as well as some fossils in the upper level of the quarry. And after lunch, we're going to travel over to Coral Caverns, which is about 20 minutes from New Parish Quarry. And you'll get a tour of the cavern, which is actually very unique. There's some cool geological things inside, and there will be a station or two set up outside, since we kind of have to break our group of 47 people into three groups. So the price was just announced since we last saw you. $63 for members, $68 for non-members, and you can just go to find the Institute in Waynesboro website, or there is the website there to get right to the geology trip. So people are signing up now, and make sure you get your seat before all 47 are taken. So anyway, you want to do this one, Mel?
I can. Red Lion telescopes with Wade Kraut. You can use that number to call or email that email address there, the redlinetelescopes@gmail.com, to schedule a time to view, touch, and demonstrate any of the telescopes that they have in stock. They are located in Red Lion, and they have customers in York, Lancaster, Harrisburg, and pretty convenient, they offer a free in-home delivery, setup, and overview of how the telescope works. So very cool if anyone is interested.
Wade just was on Facebook yesterday with a new telescope that he had delivered. It's a small refracting telescope, but it has a solar filter for it. Getting ready for the April 8th solar eclipse. So our program's coming up. Great. We got some great programs scheduled. February 20th, our next one is, you might remember this gentleman if you've been around for a year and a half or so, Greg Herman. He's the one that gave us a program about impact basins, impact craters on Earth about a year and a half ago. He has now just completed research on the impact basins of the moon, and he's going to be coming back and talking about that. March the 5th, you might remember Dean Riccio, who's a high school student. He was on with us in November. This time he's going to talk about erythrades that he has found in New York and Pennsylvania. March 19th is going to be a fun one. This is with Kurt Friedhoff from Kutztown University. What can you see through a scanning electron microscope and an EDS scope? So he's going to show you all kind of strange stuff that looks like a virus, but it really is mineral stuff. April 2nd, Susquehanna River Islands with Jennifer Illick, who's a professor at Susquehanna University. April 16th, this will be another fun one too, with Jody Smale with the Pennsylvania Geologic Survey. She's the librarian at the Geologic Survey, and she's going to tell you what does a geological library have in it. And May 7th, the rise and fall of the Appalachians. I'll be doing that. If you don't make it to Wayne, I'll be doing it again as a kind of a backup, and again for the bus trip for the ones that don't get to Waynesboro. All right, Mallory, this is yours.
It is. So, upcoming for the York County Parks, I am currently planning the Maple Sugaring Days event for 2024. Those who have been with us for a while might have remembered me talking about this last year, and I am coordinating this event yet again this year. It is going to be held on February 24th, 25th, and March 2nd and 3rd, the last weekend in February and the first weekend of March. It is one of our only events that we do require a little bit of an admission fee. It is $3 a person, but it is free for any park members and children under 4. It is inside and outside, so be prepared for any weather if you decide to come. It is a self-guided tour. We will be talking about the entire maple sugaring process, how to identify trees, the study of dendrology for any of my naturalists, ecologists out there, as well as the history behind maple sugaring. How did the Native Americans know to do this? As well as how do we go about this process today? There will be beverages and pancake samples available. There will be genuine Pennsylvania syrup for sale, as well as live music, t-shirts, hats, all of that good stuff. So it is a family-friendly event, so feel free to bring children, grandchildren, family, friends, anyone who would be interested in enjoying this wintertime event. We would love to see you there.
Mel, did I already tell you my famous syrup story at the Apple Harvest Festival?
Oh boy. Well, I do love the Apple Harvest Festival, but I don't believe that I've heard this story.
The first time I went there, we got there early in the morning, which was amazing to me. But we got there early enough to have breakfast, and I ordered pancakes. And I go to the picnic table and sit down and dump the syrup on there, and I take a bite of pancakes and I gag.
Oh no.
Because it's not maple syrup, it's apple syrup.
Oh, interesting.
And I walked around like for 2 hours with my plate of pancakes. Anybody want pancakes?
Oh,
Oh, it was terrible.
a surprise that you weren't expecting.
Oh my, it was terrible. All right, I have an announcement to make. We have a new member of our team. Valerie Long is her name, and she's going to be helping out with some of the bigger programs that JGS will be doing. And I'm hoping to have her at the Rock for Kids program, doing the toothpaste part. But Valerie's she's actually an archaeologist that's going to be working with me again this summer on a archaeological dig. I'll have more announcements about that next time I see you. She also currently is full-time employed at the History Center of York as the director of school education. So she comes with a great background of how to educate school groups and kids. So that's kind of why I tagged her on to JGS. She would be in the Zoom rooms also, but she teaches at Messiah University Tuesday nights. So we'll see if she has a spring break in March when we're on the air to get Valerie included too. So she'll be joining Mel with with our little team here and doing some cool stuff. And a reminder, April 8th, solar eclipse. And there in the blue line is the totality. We hope to have a couple members of our Zoom rock room along totality someplace in the United States. And don't want to travel too far if you're in the southeastern Pennsylvania area. At Door State Park, we are having a viewing party. It's only going to be like 91%. It's not going to be total here, but we're going to have a number of telescopes and binoculars set up for you to view through projection or through a telescope or safely through binoculars. So 1:30 to 4:30 on April 8th. More about that in a little bit. So I'm going to get out of here and get back to you. And we got to get this program done tonight because I'm having something special for supper tonight. I'm having me some possum soup. Yeah, I'm going to try possum soup. And in fact, it's Himalayan possum soup because Himalayan was along the road when I found him. So never mind. I got to draw pictures.
I thought you were going to say you assaulted the possum.
All right, welcome, fellow mushrooms.
I could do that too.
I always get asked a lot of questions about how
Hey Mel, I also learned something today too, Mel.
Oh, what did you learn?
I learned today that laughing at your mistakes can lengthen your life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But
I
laughing at
believe that.
but laughing at your wife's mistakes can shorten your life.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So okay. All right. Well, tonight's kind of a special night. We're doing something for the first time in the history of the Zoom Rock Room. I actually have a guest with me tonight in studio, and he's actually our presenter tonight. He wanted to come up and make sure that the system was going to work well. So Ken Frazier is actually sitting beside me. We're gonna trade seats here momentarily, but Ken, I think, is a chartered member of the Zoom Rock Room, aren't you? I think Ken and Mary have been with us ever since the beginning of April of 2020. And as some of you others I'm looking at, we're also chartered members, and we appreciate that. But I got Ken to do a program tonight because I think it'd be really, really interesting. As a matter of fact, if you miss it tonight, you want to see it again, he's going to do it next Tuesday night for my men's group at the church in Downstown where I go. So anyway, so what I'm gonna do is put up Ken's program here, and we're going to trade seats. Oops. Yeah. All right. And we're going to let Ken take over. I actually had on the announcement Easter Island, but there's going to be some more detail with that. So Ken and I are going to trade seats, and he'll be right with you.
Okay, I better put my glasses on for this. So this is a vacation that we did back in 2019. My wife and I both retired that summer, and we set this up. And I must say that it was very interesting, but I'm not sure we'd ever do something like this again. It was not a vacation, it was an adventure or an expedition. And a couple of things in here. We had taken about 3,500 photos. I have this up on the web at the URL that's up there. So if you want to go look at 2,400 photos that we have up there, it's up there. We ended up flying 8 different segments with 40 hours of flying times covering 16,000 miles. I traveled a lot during my career working for the Defense Department, but this was the most I ever traveled in like a 3-week period. But we flew Latam, which was a South American airline, and we were amazed at how efficient and how friendly and reliable they were. So I'm not sure if they're flying the 737 MAX planes that we now have, but we didn't have any problems. but we ate local, so we didn't have any problems with the food. I was really surprised that of the variety that we had, but neither of us ever had a problem. We stayed in so many different hotels, and it was amazing the differences in some of the hotels. It was very high end to very, you know, out in the back country type hotels, but it was pretty cool. Again, US money. We used US money everywhere in Peru and Chile, which was pretty funny, but they knew the exchange rates. Security wise, we didn't have any issues. I mean, it was a great trip. Health, we both got a mild cold. Now, this was before COVID, so we weren't worrying about that. It was funny, the water was safe almost everywhere we went, but they have high mineral contents in the water, so that can cause upset stomach. It's not a biological issue, it's more of a, you know, a mineral issue. So we didn't really drink their water, but we were as high as 15,000 feet on this trip, which one night or 2 nights we slept at 12,000 plus, and it was interesting to sleep, but we made it through all that. And I used the AT&T international plan, and I was shocked at how good the cell coverage was, even in very remote parts of Peru. So, but I'm going to go quick through a lot of this stuff, but I threw a lot of different photos in here. One of the things that I wanted to, I don't sleep on planes, so we were flying from Miami to Lima, Peru, and I wanted to know exactly when we went across the equator. So I was laying there trying to determine, and here up this middle photo and the right up at the top, I missed the equator by 975 feet when I took this snapshot. So that was pretty good considering we were moving at, you know, like 500 feet per second. But we get into Lima. Lima is one of the cloudiest large cities in the world. They have hardly any sun there at all. It's very dry. It doesn't rain, but it's just always cloudy. And the ocean is very cold there because of currents. You would think that you're not that far from the equator, it would be warmer, but it's not. They took us to this museum, and they allow you to go into the like holding areas of the museum, and they had literally hundreds of thousands of items in the storerooms, and you could just walk along and look at all this 5,000-year-old pre-Columbia artifacts, which was really cool. So we went all over Lima, Peru, and a couple of the things, we went to this one church there, and it was funny, they wouldn't show the feet of any of the statues. So all of the statues that you saw there always had little children's feet or little children's faces in place of where the feet were, or vegetables. So I don't know what in the Peru, you know, religious past or historical past, why they could not have shown feet. But the other thing that was interesting, a lot of the paintings had dogs and cats, and this one was cool because it even had a little mouse or rat that was up at the food bowl. So then we flew from Lima, which we were happy to get away from Lima because it's like 7 million people and always cloudy. So we flew up to Cusco, Peru, and this town is between 11,000 and 13,000 feet. And there were two churches that were built in the 1500s there around the town square. And the interesting thing is this church on the left was actually built on Inca ruins. So the outside is, you know, all Spanish, but the inside, and I'll show pictures later of it, is still the Inca, what they didn't destroy. It was kind of sad what was destroyed. But the other thing, this area has had, in 1950, they had like a 7.5 earthquake that destroyed a lot of this. So they actually rebuilt it back to where it was similar to what it was, you know, the way it was built. But the Inca part didn't get destroyed by the earthquakes. So at night, we'd go down to the town square, and it looks like it's wet, but this is from 500 years of people walking with dust on their shoes, and they polished this stone. And it was so neat to just walk on this and feel the way it was. It was like you were walking on marble. but it's just from the dust. And even though we were at 12,000 feet, it's still pretty warm in the evenings. So one of the restaurants we went to had some of the potatoes, and Peru has over 4,000 varieties of potato and 55 types of corn. And some of the potatoes that you would get for your meals, you would not be able to identify them as a potato, but it would kind of taste like a potato. So the first of the ruins we went to above Cusco, and I'm not good at pronouncing some of these, so they call this Sexy Woman, but it's really, as you see, Sasa, whatever. You know. But it's again, it's built on the plateau above the town. It's a big open area. It has amazing Inca stone, the way that they put it together. They're not exactly sure of the purpose of this place and why they built it. There was a bunch of recreational facilities up there, and these people were all playing, I guess, soccer and different ball games, and they're all running around at 12,400 feet, which was kind of cool. But so then you drop down into this Urubamba River Valley, and this is a tributary now of the Amazon. So we've already crossed the continental divide of South America, and we're starting at like 10,000 feet. And we followed this now for the next 3 or 4 days till we got to Machu Picchu. And after Machu Picchu, you're starting to get into what would be considered the jungles of the Amazon. So you have to watch out for yellow fever and malaria and stuff. But since we didn't go beyond Machu Picchu, we didn't have to have the shots and everything. So again, this is that river. We've now come down to
Keep going.
90, 300. And I could have spent days in this area looking at the birds that were flying along here. And it just was a neat place. But the problem with this trip is we didn't have a lot of free time. So we only had some mornings, and that's when we were walking along here. This was another interesting thing about being in the southern hemisphere is the moon, because we're essentially standing on the planet now upside down. I was trying to figure out how the moon looked different, and I made a mistake. I didn't take photos of the moon like a day or two before we came down here, but anytime I could go out now and take a photo of the moon and compare it to it. But the whole time we were on this, I was watching the phases of the moon, trying to figure out if it did look different. This was in that same area, and this up here in the top, up in the clouds, was a close to 18,000 foot high mountain that had glaciers on it and everything else. It was neat how they built the walls out of adobe, and then they would put tile on the top to keep the rain from washing the adobe walls down. So we saw that everywhere. Now this was another ruin that we went to called Pisic. It's terraces. The Incas loved to build these terraces. I mean, imagine the amount of work that you had to put into this. But they wanted flat areas to grow their food. They built this in around 1440. It didn't have any amazing stonework. It just was the amount of material that they moved and how well preserved it was. So this was in the town. They had a market there. The streets were all made out of these like river rocks that they just put in there, and you had to be real careful that you didn't break your ankles walking on this. But I imagine it would last forever. And then in Peru, they allowed almost anything to be on the road. So they would take these motorcycles and convert them into little pickup trucks that had dually wheels in the back. And you saw these things all over the place, which was kind of interesting, very resourceful. So the sad thing is I grew up having guinea pigs as a pet when I was a kid. So, but they eat a lot of guinea pigs in Peru. So you would see these signs along the road of like a guinea pig dressed up in a vest, and that said that they had them. Plus people would stand along the roads with a guinea pig on a stick. And then these were 3 guinea pigs that were at one of the cooking places waiting for their turn, which was kind of sad, But this was one of the favorite things I wanted to see on this whole trip was in this Olia Tambo. Again, I'm not pronouncing it. Oops, right. And I wish I would have read this book, Exploring Cusco by Peter Frost. We had seen this guy did a presentation and told us all kinds of things that we didn't know. And I ended up buying his book. But if any of you ever go down into this area, read this book. But one of the things that he has done a lot of research on, and it's suggesting that a lot of these rock structures were here long before the Inca, and who built a lot of these walls is still being debated, because you can see like 3 different construction periods on the walls. So it's up for debate what this stuff came from. And here was another, all along this trip, we're seeing hints of these, 17 to 21,000 foot high mountains off to our east, which was very interesting. But so now here at Ollantaytambo, however you pronounce it, we got there right before sunset. And again, some of this was some of the most amazing rock structures in the entire Inca area. And like this, with me standing under this shows like the pre-Inca construction, and then somebody piled stones up on top, which was from a different period. So again, we don't, they don't really know. And here's a close-up of some of the structure. Now, remember, this area gets like 7 and 8 magnitude earthquakes, and these have gone through earthquakes, but yet it's still perfectly intact. So this was again my number one goal of the trip, this wall of 6 monoliths. It's 36 feet wide, 14 feet high, and it's 10 feet thick. They brought these rocks, they brought them down 1,000-foot cliff, brought them a couple miles across a valley, and then brought them back up 1,000 feet. They weigh 50 to 100 tons a piece. So how did they do this? And then they built these structures in the middle, and they believe that these areas are to protect it from earthquakes. And they have different notches coming out of the rock that had some purpose. Here I am. I was scared to even touch the thing. I was scared I was going to like have some Inca, and down there, they don't care what you touch. There were signs that said, just don't pee on the walls. They don't care, it's not like up here controlled, but they built these things, and then on such a crappy base, which again, they think may be the way to protect it from earthquakes. But, and this shows how thick this was. And this is the valley. This is where they carved these rocks from, over here and over there. So how did they bring that all the way down across and then all the way back up? So I guess the aliens probably helped them, So then we went to Machu Picchu. There's only 2 ways to get to Machu Picchu. You can take the Machu Picchu trail, or by walking, or you ride the bus. We didn't want to walk, so we took the bus. But down in the lower left shows how many switchbacks the bus had to go. I have a GPS tracking software on my phone that shows, where we're going. So this was the entrance to Machu Picchu. They allow up to 5,000 people a day in Machu Picchu, but it's so big that you don't really see the people. I mean, you can see them in the photo, but it's not like you're crowded. The weather was really good. It was in the low 80s, and we had occasional showers that would go across but last for a few moments, and that was it. Again, you're starting to get close to the Amazon basin at this point, so you don't want to go much further without all your shots. So, but Machu Picchu, again, you see the different construction. You see the amazing precise construction, and then you see this other haphazard construction in it. So it's questionable who was doing what. But this is the temple area that was forbidden for anyone except for the gods, essentially, to go into, and how they carved these different terraces. Makes you wonder what they were doing in their sacrifices or whatever, and how they integrated this into the host rock. They also had a spring in there, which I thought was kind of cool, that the spring still flows after 500 years. So they were very good at judging water flow and everything else. So now we leave Machu Picchu and we go back down to Cusco for 2 days. And this was a plain area that we went on that was 15,000. So we were starting to get above where the trees were. And some of these are I never could tell exactly which mountain was which, but 18,000, 17,000. And there's actually a snow-capped peak that would come in and out of the clouds above this, and that was supposed to be 19,000. So So we stopped at this weaving cooperative that showed us some, because Rhodes Scholar Trip tries to show you the culture of the area. So they had this little child that brought out a guinea pig that was cooked for our group, which I did not try. I had chicken, but I kind of felt sorry for her for being the guinea pig carrying girl, you know. And the llamas along the road. This llama looked like it was old and it had gone through a lot, but it was still doing its thing. So in Cusco, there was a market, which was a gigantic couple block square market. They had fruits and vegetables that we could not identify. And anytime we go overseas, we always go in the supermarket to look at their fruit and their things. But one thing about Peru is they allow cocaine to be sold and in all kinds of forms. Now I was just retired, but I was getting ready to go back as a consultant, so I was scared to try any cocaine in case I had a drug test. But I did try some tea. I didn't feel any different from it. We had one woman on our trip that had filled up an entire suitcase filled with all kinds of cocaine that she was going to take home, which you're not allowed to do. And I never did hear if she made it back or not, you know. And here they are selling the skinned guinea pigs, you know, that you could take home and cook. So underneath those churches, the Inca ruins uh, were, I mean, the Spanish destroyed a lot of it, but the parts that they left were amazing. And I mean, the seams on this, and there are theories that how they were able to cut this and how they were able to form it. And there's some scientists that believe that they actually melted this rock somehow and they allowed it to be like into a gel state and then got it to form like that. Then it cooled off, because we would have difficulty today doing this type of work. I mean, think of how many diamond drill bits and blades we would have to use. But so this was another thing that was very interesting. There was some type of portal that they purposely made extremely precise, but then left these jagged rocks. And this they think was covered with gold. So it's, I mean, again, this church had like tons of gold. They think that in today's market there was billions of dollars worth of gold in here. So, like, were the Incas, did they have some type of portal or something? It's hard to say. But we're back in that plaza with the polished, you know, stone, and the church bells would ring. And I have it up on the webpage. The bells were the deepest bells that would just vibrate your body. I mean, I would sit there and wait for the bells to ring again. It was amazing. So now we've flown to Santiago, Chile, and we flew into Santiago, Chile right when all the riots in 2019 were occurring, where there was martial law and the police were actually starting to shoot protesters. So it was an interesting time to be in Santiago. We were right downtown. So this was another church that probably had $1 billion worth of gold in it. The churches in Cusco did not allow you to take photos, but this church did. In fact, the only rule they had was no ice cream cones that you were allowed to take into the church, which they didn't have ice cream cones for sale outside of the church. So I couldn't figure out that rule. But I guess you could bring a bowl in if you wanted to. But so we toured around Santiago. Again, there's 20,000 foot high active volcanoes and mountains off to the east there. This was one, but the smog of, I think there was 7 or 9 million people that lived there. So it was kind of a smoggy place. This was a view from our hotel at day and at night. And again, the city was on martial law. So you can see on some of the street views down here, there's very few cars. You were not allowed to go out of the hotel. You were not allowed to drive around. But, and again, these are the 20,000 foot high mountains. One of the things I wanted to see was the Southern Cross, and I could clearly see it I put the mark there, but you can see the star there. And so we were able to see that anytime. Even on the cruise I just went on, if you get like a little further south of Florida, you can generally see it if you know where to look. It's further south, it's up in the evening. But if you're, you know, a little further north, you have to look at like 4 o'clock in the morning for it. So we're flying to 2,300 miles from Santiago, Chile to Easter Island. Now, Easter Island, Chile doesn't allow any flights to come to it unless you come from Santiago, Chile. So we met some people on Easter Island that were from New Zealand, and Easter Island is halfway to New Zealand. It's only about, I have it on one of these slides, like 3,400 miles or whatever. So these poor people had to fly from New Zealand across Easter Island to Chile, then get back on a plane and then go back to Easter Island. And then they had to do that again on the way home. So I'm looking out the window of the plane thinking that Antarctica is the next thing that's only 3,200 miles away. So you're hoping that the plane doesn't have a problem out here, because you're in trouble. So again, now we're on Easter Island. Close to the little town was these these ruins, and they're called moais. If I'm pronouncing it right. If my wife was here, she'd probably be yelling at me, but these things were all over the place on the island. I mean, there was like ruins of them just laying along the road. It would have been neat to dig some of that stuff up and bring it home, but they do search your luggage whenever you leave, So this was one that they refurbished, and they showed the eyes restored the way that they thought they were. And this has what's called a top knot, which is like the way the hair was depicted. Now, the quarry that they got this volcanic material out of was from one place like 10 miles away from where they actually mined these figures, statues from. So how they transported this stuff all around the island and then put this stuff together and then erected it, I have, no idea. But very few of them had these top knots, because I guess the earthquakes and everything else knocked them off over time. So, so they had good Chile beer, and they had roaches everywhere, these gigantic roaches, and they were friendly. You could just reach down and pick them up and pet the roaches. So if you ever go there, be ready for the roaches. So then this was one of the areas, and you can see these, they would like dig them, or they'd make them, but yet they would sink. So again, is the soil soft and it causes them to start sinking? Did they bury them? I couldn't figure out what. And there was, again, discussions on what was occurring in these places. This stone structure that had precise stones indicates that they had contact with the Inca Empire. So, because nowhere else on the island did they have these precise cuts. So were the Incas all the way out here, 2,300 miles out into the Pacific, at the same time helping them? I mean, there's a lot of interesting theories of what was occurring. Here's the quarry that produced the top knots. These were again, made out of like a red ash that was found in the island. There's 3 major volcanoes on the island, all extinct, but they had plenty of material to work with. You'll notice in these pictures there are no trees. They cut down all the trees around 1600, and they had cannibalism and population decline. They did a DNA sequence of the current inhabitants, and indicates that only 36 people survived when the population crashed back in the 1600s. And most of the people are now Polynesians, so they were people that came from the islands much further to the west. So it was a very rugged and a very bad past there of what happened on that island. Again, this was the quarry where they made these, but the way they were just sticking out of the ground, it's questionable. Did they roll them down the hill? Is this hill unstable, in the last 500 years? So it's neat. And the island is very restrictive on the people who can come there. They limit, and since we've been there, they even have limited the amount of people they allow to go there even more. So they don't allow a lot of research, a lot of scientists. They have their beliefs, even though it's probably not scientifically valid. But so again, here's more of the faces. like I said, I'm sure they wouldn't have missed one. But again, all of these go down like 20 feet and they have a body attached to them. It's not just a head. So, and it was interesting, some of the lichens, if I'm pronouncing that right, that are on them, because the air quality of where we were is probably some of the cleanest air on the entire planet. So it was growing all kinds of interesting things. So this was the largest moai that they had found. It was 72 feet tall. It weighed 102 tons, more than the weight of two 737s. But they think that they overextended themselves. Experts believe that if they finished it, and there's a question if they would have ever intended to finish it, they could not have moved it. So, but they were carving that out of the hill. And there's my wife, just to give you a scale of how big this was. So, but so then some of the most famous parts, they had these lined up like this back in the 1600s, but then they had earthquakes and a tsunami, which amazed me because we were up pretty far from the water. So a tsunami came and knocked all these down. So they back, I believe in the 60s, re-erected all of these. Oh, the Civil War, they knocked a bunch of them over. But here's one that has that top hat on it. So, and this area was gigantic. I mean, we're talking about, an entire valley with this in it. And it was hard to take pictures of things because of the size. And this photo, oh, that's the top hat. How they got that up there, they maybe piled dirt or something and got it up there. And again, the stone for that was over 10 miles away. So here's the whole wide shot of that area. And you can see the water is close, but to think a tsunami came up and was able to knock those over off of their platform, that's pretty impressive. So, and it's volcanic rock, and these trees have been planted since the 60s. So it was a very windswept, and it wasn't that warm. You'll notice everybody's wearing jackets. It's you think it's tropical, but we were about as far south as like Wilmington, North Carolina is north. And being in October was the end of, it was their fall. So it was starting, no, it was their spring. So wait, October is our fall. So it's their spring. So it was, it was a bit chilly. But here was one that was just laying along the road. And again, I would have liked to taken that. And then this one shows it has an additional thing there. Maybe that's why they buried them all in the ground. They didn't want to show below the belt what the things actually were. So, I don't know. But so this is one of the volcanoes. It's a 1,063-foot tall, they say dormant volcano. The youngest rocks were around 150,000 years ago. And this is where they get the fresh water from on the island. They have 3 of these volcanoes that, again, contains fresh water. There was one of these trees along here, Toramano tree in the wild, and it was chopped down for firewood in 1960, and it went extinct at that point. There are no more of those trees on Earth. So it would have been interesting to see what that looked like. It's in a, down here at the bottom, but heavy disforesting is eliminated most of the island's forests by the 17th century. So it ultimately extinct in the wild. So maybe they still have some in the, in a nursery or something somewhere. But there was a lot of wild horses just roaming around on the island. And this was up on that volcano. It was 1,000 feet down to the water, which was pretty impressive. They have their own beer there, which was very good. And the other thing that was funny is they had to give you mayonnaise. In Chile, they give you mayonnaise with every single thing you order, even if it doesn't seem like mayonnaise would go with the meal. But here I ordered a pretty good cheeseburger, but I got mayonnaise. And at first I thought it was like cream cheese until I tried it. And it's like, nope, this isn't cream cheese. So this was our last sunset there, thinking about New Zealand, only 4,300 miles in that direction. And again, here's another shot of the moon. southern hemisphere moon and my comparison chart up here of the way it looks in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. Um, so then the security here was pretty much a joke. You would walk down to get your stuff x-rayed, and then you come right back up the other side of this little barrier here that's just like a fabric between poles, and people were like handing food across and doing everything. So there was no control. And I had bought 2 meteorites in Peru, and they looked through my luggage and they found those meteorites. And there was like this great debate whether I was stealing the meteorites from Easter Island. And I believe I had a receipt, so I convinced them that I wasn't. But and of course it was written in like Peruvian, it wasn't in Spanish, so it was interesting. So, but and they only have one airplane a week that comes there. So you walk out to the plane, they don't have any gates or anything like that. So it was a 767. It was a really nice plane. Thank God for, how far we had to go. So now we're back in Chile, and we went to this town, and it's funny here on the Zoom on Jerry's machine, it's blocking some of what I can read, but you can see the name of the town up here. It's a coastal town in Chile. What's interesting is this town gets like 8.4 magnitude earthquakes every like 50 years, 60 years. It totally destroys the town with tsunamis. They had an earthquake here that had the tsunami that killed many people in Japan because of the going across the Pacific. So I'm walking around thinking, uh-oh, they're way overdue. Everybody's like laughing about it. I'm thinking, let's hope it doesn't happen today. But these are Chinese SUV, and they said their joke was that this will be the last car you'll ever have because no one will ever buy it from you. It was the Great Wall M6. It looked like a half decent car, but they were all over the place. They must be really cheap. So they had many of these funiculars or inclines in town because the whole town is built on so many hills. So of course, as I'm riding down this, I'm thinking about that 8.4 magnitude earthquake. But we then we're going back now to Santiago, and it's amazing how south, or how this looks like California. I mean, with the earthquakes, the city, it's modern, the roads, just we are like 2,300 miles south of California. We're like in an equivalent area of California in comparison to the northern hemisphere. It was pretty interesting, even though the winds here come from the east and go west because you're south of the equator. So, and then this was our flight back, which was a long flight. 13 hours. We flew from Santiago back to Miami, and I didn't catch the equator on that one back. I must have dozed off. So, and that's it. Again, this is all up on the web. I mean, we went nuts and documented this trip. If you ever want to look at all the photos and everything else and the food we ate, it's up there. So I hope you enjoyed that. Any questions?
I know it's not a geological question, but I was wondering, what was the hotel like on Easter Island?
It was, I actually have pictures of it up on the web. It came with a free cat that would come and lay on your porch. And it was nice. There's no air conditioning. It's interesting. They had good cell service there, but they really reduced they didn't like the tourists. That was the whole thing about it. They reduced your internet connection, and I was able to like send one email a day out at the speed that they allowed us there. And they didn't have Wi-Fi, and we would walk down the street to a restaurant or walk around the town, but it was just a 1 story with lots of gardens. That's where that roach was that was at the hotel. Your doors, had like an inch high gap at the bottom of the door. Again, they don't have the power to run air conditioning or heat. So it's a very neutral temperature. I bet it was probably like 65 during the day and maybe 61 at night or something. It was very, very tight. So, but no, we didn't have any problems. They were friendly, even though they were having protests, and the protesters were walking around the town banging on pots and pans and dogs barking. It was like the Northern Exposure program of Easter Island, if you ever watched that. you didn't have problems going out at night or anything, walking around. And the problem was they kept us so busy on this Rhodes Scholar thing that we were ready to go to bed at like 7:30. So there was no nightlife, you know. So
This is a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much.
you're
I saw a lot of things I hadn't seen before.
yeah, again, go check out the webpage. I mean, there was a lot of adventure on this. You know, I would love to go on another one of these trips now because I've kind of forgot, like, oh, we were getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. We were out eating dinner at 10:30 at night, you know. So, but they want you to see everything you can see. So, okay.
Other question? Nope.
My chat's not working. I wanted to say thank you very much. It was a very interesting program.
Oh.
Really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you.
Let me stop there. Let me look at the. Any questions over here? There's a theory of moving the big rocks around. They could use snow and ice.
But I don't think it ever snowed or got ice down there.
You think, okay.
They grew year round. So
Any issues with altitude sickness?
the first night that I slept at 12,000, I didn't have a good night. I would get up, you know, out of breath. And the hotel had oxygen. And of course, their solution was to chew cocaine leaves, which I didn't feel that would be good for my future employment with the government. So I made it through the first night. Now, when we were up at 15,000, I didn't really feel it. I've been over 14,000 in Colorado a number of times, but I don't think I would have jogged around. And some of the older people in our group were pretty laid back on those 15,000, but no, it wasn't that bad.
What was the tour that you were with?
It's with Rhodes Scholar. It's a U.S. nonprofit company, and they set up these tours all over the world. And they have a local guide. So in Peru, we had a local guide that took us everywhere. And then in Chile, we had a local person. And then in Easter Island, we had a local person. So you have historians and reefers, but it's very impressive what they would do. And if you just type Rhodes Scholar, you'll see all their stuff. Since we did it once, we get like phone book thick guides of all the adventures that they go on. And they go into some pretty crazy places, you know, in the Mideast and stuff like that, and China. So I will probably do it again, but we'll lower the level of activity that we took on this one.
All right. A lot of comments about great presentation, and it was. You might have heard me hemming and hawing around back here in the background, looking at some of these pictures and the great mason work. And I know when Ken does this program next Tuesday with my men's group at church, there is one guy who will be in attendance who is going to push the aliens. I mean,
well, there could be some evidence of that soon.
he really believes in that. So, okay. Thanks for coming in. Hey, Mel, one more thing for you.
Sure.
I know you're a great baker. I would enter you in a baking contest anytime. And you haven't fed anything that killed me yet. But bread is just like the sun. Bread rises in the yeast, and it sets in the waste.
I love it.
So, in case you ever want to remember that, you may do that. So, okay. Next time we're going to be going to the moon in 2 weeks. We're going to hear about impact basins. This is a brand new theory that Greg Herman has. He's just when I talked to him to line this up, he was just finishing. I think he's writing a book about it, and I think he was just finishing up the book. when I talked to him back in probably December. So he impressed several of us when he did the impact structures of around the world with his theory and thinking. So I'm afraid of what he's going to do for us when he talks about the impact basins on the moon. So remember, all these recordings are on our website, jonesgeo.com, under Zoom Rock Room. Go back and look at one of your favorites or tell somebody about it. And with that, I'm going to let Melanie take us out of here.
Alrighty, I appreciate you all coming out tonight, and we will see you all next time. See you later.
We'll see everybody.